Ever wonder how something as mind-bogglingly complex as life?
Could emerge from,
Not much.
yeah,
We're diving deep
into the heart of.
into the heart of biological evolution today,
That's right.
exploring the how behind the incredible diversity of life on Earth.
Absolutely.
And get this,
Hmm.
we're doing it through the lens of computer science
Yes.
with Stephen Wolfram as our guide.
A fascinating perspective.
You might know him as the brains behind Mathematica and Wolfram Alpha.
Of course, he's a genius.
But he's also been exploring this fascinating intersection of computation and evolution.
And this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay,
He argues that to truly understand how life evolves.
let's unpack that.
Okay.
You're saying instead of looking at evolution as this grand, intricate plan, we should be looking at it more like a computer program.
Exactly. And the building blocks of this program are surprisingly simple.
Okay.
Imagine a grid, like a giant checkerboard,
Okay.
where each square can be one of a few colors.
I'm picturing it.
Now picture these squares changing color based on simple rules about their neighbors.
Okay.
That's a cellular automaton.
So, like, if a square has two red neighbors, it turns blue.
Exactly.
If there's one blue and one green, it turns yellow, that kind of thing.
Yes. These rules, as basic as they seem, are like the genetic code of a digital organism.
Okay.
Wolfram calls this the genotype.
Genotype. Got it.
And just like in real life where genes influence traits,
Right.
these simple rules determine the patterns that emerge on the grid,
Okay.
which we can think of as the organism's phenotype,
Their phenotype.
its outward appearance or
Yeah.
behavior.
It's like those nature documentaries where they fast forward through a plant's life cycle.
I see what you're saying.
Except here, we're fast forwarding through the code of life itself.
Exactly.
So how do these digital organisms actually evolve?
Well, just like in nature, these digital organisms are subject to mutations.
Okay.
Those random changes in their genetic code, those rules that govern their behavior.
So they're not static.
Exactly.
They can change.
Wolfram introduces these mutations randomly,
Yeah.
like shuffling the deck of possible rules.
So far, so good.
Mm-hmm.
We've got our digital organisms,
Yep.
their rule book of life,
Right.
and the occasional shakeup in the form of these mutations.
Exactly.
But how do we go from simple squares changing color to, actual complex life?
That's a great question.
Where does the whole survival of the fittest thing come in?
It comes down to selection, but not in the way you might think.
Okay.
Wolfram starts with a really basic rule, one where the digital organisms quickly die out.
They're just not cut out for it.
Exactly. They're not very fit in this digital world.
All right.
But then he introduces random mutations and observes.
Okay.
Some of these mutations, by pure chance, might make the organism last a bit longer on the grid.
So a slight tweak to the rule book accidentally makes them more resilient?
Precisely. Those that survive longer are allowed to reproduce,
Okay.
meaning their slightly modified rulebook gets passed on.
Ah, interesting.
Those that don't, well, they vanish from the digital world.
Tough crowd.
It's a simplified version of natural selection,
Okay.
where the fittest in this case simply means those that persist the longest.
I'm starting to see where this is going. So we have
Okay.
these digital organisms blindly mutating.
Yes.
And the ones that stumble upon a beneficial mutation, a change that helps them survive,
Right.
well, they become the ancestors of the next generation.
Precisely.
No grand plan, just pure computational exploration, right?
Absolutely. And what's remarkable is that even with this simple setup,
Okay.
starting with a boring rule and letting these digital organisms evolve with random mutations,
Right.
and this basic form of selection, Wolfram found that they could develop surprisingly complex and intricate patterns.
Hold on.
Yeah.
You're telling me that these simple rules with a little bit of random tinkering
Yes.
can lead to something that looks organized, even beautiful.
I need an example.
Imagine a simple line of these digital organisms.
With a basic rule, they might just blink out of existence after a few generations.
Right. They just disappear.
But with the right mutation, that line might start to branch out, forming intricate patterns that resemble trees, snowflakes, or even coral reefs.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing.
So are you saying that the intricate designs we see in nature, a butterfly's wings or a sunflower's spiral, could be the result of a similar process?
It's a fascinating possibility.
Not a conscious design, but the outcome of eons of these simple rules playing out.
Right.
With a little help from chance mutations.
That's precisely the idea Wolfram is exploring. It challenges our traditional understanding of how complexity arises.
I can see that.
It suggests that maybe, just maybe, the incredible diversity and beauty of life isn't the result of some grand plan. but rather an emergent property of simple rules iterating over vast stretches of time.
So not necessarily design, but definitely emergent.
Exactly.
Okay, my mind is officially blown.
It's pretty wild stuff.
So we've got these digital organisms evolving complexity from simple rules.
Yes.
But I have to ask,
Yeah.
are we talking about one lucky lineage hitting the jackpot after millions of generations?
That's a great question.
Or are there multiple paths to this intricate dance of life?
That's where it gets even more interesting.
Okay.
Imagine instead of one straight line of evolution,
Okay.
there's a whole network of possible paths, like a choose-your-own-adventure book for genes.
Okay.
Wolfram calls these mutation highways.
Okay, I'm visualizing a map, but instead of cities, we have different life forms.
Right.
And the roads are those mutations.
Yes.
Some lead to dead ends, some converge, and some branch off in wild new directions.
You're exactly right. Wolfram shows us that some mutations are like taking a wrong turn. They lead to organisms that just can't hack it and quickly disappear.
Right.
Others, even though they might seem different, ultimately lead to very similar outcomes.
So like different roads leading to the same destination, just in this case, the destination is a successful complex organism.
Exactly. But here's where the analogy gets even cooler.
Okay.
Imagine this map isn't flat, but a wild 3D landscape with mountains, valleys, and everything in between.
Okay.
Wolfram calls this the fitness landscape.
Okay, I'm picturing our mutation map, but now it's all hilly and bumpy.
Yes.
So what do these hills represent?
Each point on this landscape represents a different possible organism, a different combination of those simple rules. And just like in nature, where some traits are more advantageous than others, the higher the point on the landscape, the more fit that organism is in its digital environment.
So the peaks of these mountains are like the super successful, highly evolved creatures.
Right.
While the valleys are, well, not so lucky.
Precisely. And remember, those genes, those simple rules, they don't know what's best for survival.
They're just...
Evolution is a blind process.
Right.
It's just that some of those random mutations accidentally nudge an organism uphill toward greater fitness.
So it's like they're climbing blindfolded sometimes, taking a wrong step, sometimes stumbling onto a better path, but always striving for those peaks.
Exactly. But there's another twist.
Okay.
This fitness landscape isn't static.
Oh, really?
It's constantly shifting and changing based on the environment competition from other organisms, even just random events.
It's like those mountains are alive, rising and falling.
Yes.
Forcing our digital organisms to constantly adapt just to stay alive, let alone thrive. It makes you appreciate the dynamism of evolution. It's this constant dance between an organism and its ever-changing world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It highlights how evolution isn't about reaching some perfect final form.
Right.
It's about continually navigating this unpredictable landscape, adapting to whatever challenges come your way.
Which leads to a pretty profound question.
What's that?
If evolution is essentially blind, always reacting to the present, can we predict its course? Can we look at an organism at its rulebook and predict what it will evolve into?
It's a fascinating question.
Or is it just too chaotic, too driven by chance? It's really hard to say, for sure.
So we're left with this image of evolution as this blind climber navigating a constantly shifting fitness landscape.
It's a powerful analogy.
It's kind of daunting, even humbling to think about it that way.
It really is.
But you hinted at a connection between all of this and the limits of logic.
Yeah.
I'm hooked. Tell me more.
Well, it turns out there's this concept in computer science, the halting problem, that sheds light on just how unpredictable even simple systems can be.
Okay.
Imagine you've got a computer program and you want to know if it'll eventually stop running or if it'll just loop forever.
Oh?
Sounds simple enough, right?
Sure. I guess it depends on how the program's written.
You'd think so.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing is, for a huge number of programs, there's no way to tell just by looking at the code.
You have to actually run the program and see what happens.
So it's like hitting play on a movie and trying to guess the ending just from the opening scene.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can get a general idea, but there are always those films that completely subvert your expectations.
Exactly. And Wolfram suggests that evolution faces a similar predicament.
In that we can't predict it.
We can't always predict how those digital organisms will evolve.
Right.
Just like we can't always tell if a program will halt.
Okay.
Life, it seems, has a knack for throwing curveballs.
It makes you wonder, if it's so unpredictable, how does evolution ever stumble upon anything useful?
That's the beauty of it, I guess.
I mean, it's one thing for a digital organism to accidentally survive longer on a grid.
Right.
But in the real world, we're talking about things like the evolution of the human eye, the intricate mechanisms of a cell.
And that's where the sheer vastness of possibilities comes into play.
Okay.
Think about how many different ways you could combine those simple rules in our cellular automata model.
Okay.
The possibilities are almost endless.
So it's like that saying, a million monkeys banging on a million typewriters will eventually produce the complete works of Shakespeare.
Yeah, kinda.
Except in this case, it's more like trillions of organisms over billions of years,
Right.
with mutations acting as the typewriter keys.
You got it. And while that might seem random, and on one level it is,
Okay.
it also means that evolution is exploring a search space of unimaginable size,
Right.
constantly testing new combinations, discarding the failures, and building upon the successes.
It's like evolution is blindly flipping through that choose your own adventure book we talked about,
I like it.
trying every path, every possible ending until it lands on something truly remarkable.
It really puts a new spin on the phrase trial and error, doesn't it? And it reframes how we think about complexity in biology.
Okay.
Maybe it's not always about natural selection, meticulously crafting every detail,
Okay.
but more about the inherent potential of simple rules, given enough time and iterations to generate astonishing complexity.
So the intricate design of a sunflower, the incredible efficiency of a bird in flight.
Uh-huh.
It's not necessarily about some grand design,
Right.
but more like a happy accident on a cosmic scale.
Not an accident exactly, because the rules of the game are always there guiding the process,
Okay.
but the specific outcomes, the amazing tapestry of life we see around us,
Yeah.
it's a testament to the power of this blind computational process.
It's both awe-inspiring and a little bit terrifying, isn't it?
Agree.
To think that something as magnificent as life could emerge from such humble beginnings.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it leaves us with a profound question, one that Wolfram himself grapples with.
Okay.
Could there be a science of biological complexity?
Okay.
Could we one day have a set of principles that help us understand, even predict, how complex systems like life evolve?
Wow.
Just like we have laws of physics that govern the universe.
Now that is a question for the ages.
It really is.
And honestly, I don't know if we have the answer yet, but this whole idea that buried within the seeming chaos of evolution, there might be a deeper order, a hidden logic waiting to be discovered.
It's a possibility.
That's exhilarating.
It is.
And who knows, maybe someday we'll crack the code of complexity itself.
I hope so.
Well, on that note, we'll leave you to ponder the vastness of it all. This has been quite the deep dive into the heart of evolution, exploring not just the what, but the how and the why.
It's been a pleasure joining you today.
Thanks for being here, and we'll see everybody next time for another deep dive.